Alright, y'all. Before we jump into Iceland, there are a couple of terms I'd like to define. The first is Norse, which is usually in reference to the ancient Scandinavian language, Old Norse. Traditionally, a Norseman is any of the North Germanic peoples of ancient Scandinavian lands, of which included the northwestern European countries of Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Iceland, Finland, and the Faroe Islands. Ancient Norse religion was polytheistic, having a number of deities. Nordic folks didn't have the necessity of giving a title to their religion until it was challenged by outsiders, which is where the names usually came from. Old English called it heathenry, mainly because its practitioners were dwelling on the heath. The Latin description pagan meant villager, rustic, or civilian. These terms, invented by outsiders, were introduced during an era of religious competition, and therefore carried with them negative connotations from the outsider's perspective. The English translation of the medieval Icelandic term "fon sittur," or old custom, is what I'll be using in this video, just to spare these folks any more demonization than they've already endured over the course of history. World History for Morons, Chapter 1. Iceland. Iceland is a European country located in the North Atlantic Ocean just south of the Arctic Circle. Its entire landmass, including 30 smaller satellite islands, is about the size of Virginia. Iceland, geographically, is a volcanic island with fjords, glaciers, and lakes, and the highlands of its interior are made up of mountainous lava deserts, which are completely uninhabitable. Their population of about 320,000 is settled mainly on Iceland's coastline, particularly in the southwest, in and around the capital city of Reykjavik. The first thing that used to come to mind when I thought about Iceland was how it got its name. You know, there were people living there way back when the Vikings were doing their plundering thing, and those people didn't want thugs with big horns on their heads coming to their island, so they called it Iceland and the big chunk of ice to the west of it Greenland to confuse the bad guys and throw them off the scent. Okay, not true. A couple of Scandinavian sailors, at different intervals during the 9th century, randomly landed on this uninhabited island after getting blown off course by storms. They gave it various names, Snowland being one. The second sailor, with a name I can't pronounce, named it after himself. Yeah, good luck with that. It wasn't until 865 when this dude spent a brutal winter there, and on spotting some drift ice of the fjords, he named the island Iceland, which for some reason beat out Snowland. So really, all of these men were Vikings. In fact, Icelanders are pretty proud of the fact that they're direct descendants of Vikings. I mean, anyone able to look this good in a leather diaper? I'd be a proud descendant too. Alright, so Beowulf wasn't a Viking, at least not in the chronological sense. While he was a Scandinavian, scholars think if he lived, it was during the 4th century AD, and the Viking Age didn't actually begin until June 8, 793, when Vikings landed on the English island of Lindisfarne, destroying its abbey, taking some monks as slaves, and tossing the rest into the sea to drown. This makes the idea of the Vikings being bloodthirsty, warfaring barbarians a reasonable one, until you take into account that just a few years earlier, in 782, the Frankish king, Charles the Great, ordered 4,500 Saxon leaders beheaded as a lesson to the North Germanic tribes that resisting conversion to Christianity was futile. On top of this political pressure to convert came the added insult of it being made unlawful for Christian merchants to trade with Muslims or Nordic peoples practicing the old custom, in essence forcing Scandinavian trade underground into a black market with inflated prices. I don't see what all the huff about Norsemen practicing the old custom was to begin with. Yeah, they had human sacrifice, but really it was a way for slaves to rise in status, and because of that, slaves volunteered for it. An eyewitness account of such a ritual survives in Ibn Fadlan's 10th century manuscript describing the ship burial of a dead chieftain. One of the chief's slave girls offers to go with him into the next life. She's given alcohol until she's heavily intoxicated, has sex with numerous warriors and tradesmen, is then simultaneously strangled and stabbed to death by an old woman and a couple of warriors, and then placed on the funeral pyre with her new dead husband. At any rate, the Christianization of Europe was happening around the turn of the first millennium, so to spare their new settlement the hardships of war with Christians, the Icelandic tribes came together in their parliament, Althing, and after a night of meditation, they voted Christianity in, without a single drop of blood being shed. During its first 1,000 years, Iceland underwent a number of hardships. A bunch of plagues came through, including the Black Death and the bubonic plague, wiping out a slew of the population with each blow. The Little Ice Age happened around the same time, extending winters and shortening growing seasons. And if all that wasn't enough, in 1783 the volcano Laki erupted, spewing out 3 cubic miles of lava, killing 9,000 people along with 80% of Iceland's livestock. The starvation that followed took out another quarter of its people, and those years of difficulty have since been known as the Mist Hardships. With respect to ownership, an Icelandic family called the Sturlungs sold their kinsmen out to the Norwegian king in the 13th century. After the Norwegian line dies out, Iceland gets passed to Denmark. They impose some harsh trade monopolies on Iceland, which eventually get lifted. More political stuff happens on through the years until we get to 1874, where Iceland celebrates 1,000 years of settlement, and the Danish king allows them a constitution to be written. Finally, in 1944, Iceland formally becomes an independent republic, and the Danish king sends them a letter of congratulations. Occupation-wise, during the Second World War, Iceland asserts publicly that it's a neutral nation, and then is invaded by 25,000 British troops. In 1941, the U.S. takes over, bringing in 40,000 troops, and the British take off. And in 2006, the U.S. decides that the Icelandic people are finally safe from the Germans, and we leave. Modern-day Iceland is currently in some tough financial straits due to their major banks taking heavy hits during the 2008 world financial market meltdown. But at least that Althing parliament of theirs gave them the option to vote whether they wanted to pay their debt of $3.5 billion to Britain right away or not. Despite these money troubles, they remain an interesting combination of strange customs and contemporary lifestyle. For example, as a tribute to their ancestry, they eat traditional Norse meals during the Nordic months of January and February, including pickled ram's testicles and putrefied shark. And they voted in the world's first openly gay head of state, Johanna Sigurdardóttir, as their prime minister, who, among many other things, legalized gay marriage and then banned strip clubs. That's right, boys, you can't even hire a topless waitress to serve you your food in a bar there. But that doesn't bother me, because my vote's still with this guy.